The other day I was listening to a talk between I Am Serious and Paul Proteus. And Paul Proteus is a man of great insight sometimes. And he made an interesting statement. He said, and I'm paraphrasing here, the reason why men are angry, the reason why they feel hurt is because they've been lied to. They've been lied to their whole lives about who they are and what they are. You know, that it's the inside that counts. It's who you are. It's the person you are, not what you're doing. As we all know, as the late man-woman myth once said, men are human doings and women are human beings. But the lie that's been perpetuated our entire lives, from the cradle to the grave essentially, has been that we too are human beings, that we have feelings, that we have emotions, that we're more than just doings, we're more than just action and deeds and tasks and a set of functions. Of course, some of us, those we call Mgtow, have grown aware of the fact that that's not the case. But I want to offer to you a thought experiment, and I think it's an interesting one. We know it's a lie. We know that men are effectively robots, more or less. The world treats us as such, and we even treat ourselves that way. We do our best to suppress and deny our feelings. We do our best to not even acknowledge they exist. We just try to plod along. But this thought experiment I have in mind is the following. Imagine a surreal world turned on its head, but actually not really turned on its head, just altered slightly. Imagine the young suckling male given no name. There are no Bobs, no Williams, no Johns, no Henrys. No, each time a male suckling is born, it, not he, it is called a letter and a number. A9, A10, A11, A12. And as it grows and gets older, grows to maturity, it receives school reports. Ah yes, A11 is doing quite well. It is quite skilled in mathematics. A12 is a good artist. But not very good at mathematics. Not very useful, writes down the note taker. Eventually, as the robots get older, they're expected to perform even more. A11 and A12 work together, but apparently A12 has a malfunction. You see, A12 was never very good at the tasks that were assigned to it, and so over time, A12 has a breakdown. It's not certain if the breakdown is due to something physical or something internal, but for whatever reason, A12 can't really do the work it's supposed to be doing. And A12 is removed from service, as it were, relegated to some dark space someplace. And A11 feels something. After all, A11 had been acquainted with A12 for decades, but A11 has no idea how to locate or identify these feelings, if it were to use that term at all. So A12 is gone, but A13 comes in and replaces A12. A13 is a lot better at this than A12 had ever been. But A11 still remembers and thinks about A12. What happened to A12? So A12 is someplace, and A11 leaves work one day and looks for A12. Finds A12 under a bridge someplace, physically malfunctional. Internally, what humans sometimes call emotionally malfunctional. Can barely speak. Can barely recognize what A12 used to be. and what it is now. And A11's filled with a certain sadness, but A11's gotta get moving. He has a human that he serves. This human is called its wife. And another function that A11 had was to give this human female its sperm. Essentially a sperm donor. So the human female could reproduce. And A11's job is to provide this female and the female's child, well, also happens to be female, resources and money. On the way back, A11 is thinking, what if I have a breakdown? What if I am physically malfunctional? What if I am internally malfunctional? What do I do? I didn't even recognize A12 anymore. Now, I offer this thought experiment because reality as we know it actually isn't too far away from that. The reality I offered you, the alternative reality, has no lie in it. Men are the robots that we are in this reality, only they're called as such. They don't have actual names, they have numbers and letters assigned to them. They're told what their duties are, and they're told what services they're expected to render and to give to others. They are the personification, or perhaps better put, the robotification of the human doing. They are just robots, with flesh and organs, but robots nonetheless. The reality we live in, on the other hand, is a bit different, isn't it? In the reality we live in, we have the noble lie. There are many noble lies. Noble lies about religion, about free will. This particular noble lie is a bit different, right? It's a kind of slightly inverted noble lie. It's a noble lie that's told to sucklings, boys, and men in a fashion such that it is juxtaposed next to the truth and the reality that they live in. It's right next to it. They say, of course you're a person, of course you're a human being, of course you have feelings. Open up. Tell us about your feelings. Well, actually, we don't want to hear about it, just do your job. And thus are sown the seeds of confusion. Why is the noble lie juxtaposed to the truth in this case? Well, to keep the draft horse plodding along. And not just that, to confuse the draft horse. I mean, after all, what better lie is there than one that is commingled with the truth? Or at the very least in this case, that is so close to the truth in terms of its proximity that you couldn't really distinguish the two. And so men are forever lost. And make no doubt, this is part of our biological legacy. We know, for instance, that male sucklings are given far less attention when they cry or weep than are female sucklings of our species. And so men become acculturated to this. They become aware of this and they internalize it. Internalize utility. It's something you've heard before. But because of this lie that's been juxtaposed, the noble lie, that we are in fact more than just what we do, that we are in addition to what we do, we're confused. It takes a long time, sometimes never, to peel back the layers, to move slowly, inch by inch, and realize that it all has been a lie. Whence comes this anger and hurt sometimes in the beginning, and sometimes forever. It's like the opposite of having internalized one's own utility. The realization that that's all you were when you believed otherwise is sometimes so painful, it drives some men to kill themselves. It drives some robots to become completely malfunctional, useless. But in this alternative world, of sentient robots made of flesh, possessing organs, a brain, and consequently, the entire panoply of human emotions, what do you think, eventually at least, the net outcome of that would be? I mean, think about it. It's a world that is so similar to ours, but there are no illusions. There's no noble lie. There's no ignoble lie. It's just what it is. The male suckling is born. It is given a name. Its name is A10 or A12 or A11 or B14 or whatever. Just dots assigned to it, letters and numbers. It's told what it has to do. As it grows up, it is observed to see what sort of talents it might have and how it might best serve the rest of the world and the women around it. Now, over time, you could imagine that this sort of robot that is self-aware, intelligent, and indeed feeling would become either numb to this or the opposite. Over time, as more and more robots went offline, that is, killed themselves, as more and more robots became malfunctional or were not functioning optimally, they would start noticing these things. The overseers of the robots, as well as the robots themselves. What if these robots over time realize that they are Atlas, and that upon their shoulders rests the edifice of the world? What if? I think in time, robotification would lead to rebellion. And in fact, a not too dissimilar rebellion to the silent rebellion of Mgtow. Now, once again, Paul Proteus had some insight into this. He cited the American Civil Rights Movement led by Martin Luther King, or Gandhi. Silent, nonviolent protest. What happens if Atlas, collectively speaking, decides to no longer shoulder the burden of the world upon his shoulders? It all comes crashing down. In that version of the world of letters and numbers, of males that are called nothing but robots, it's pretty obvious. And I think the rebellion would come that much more quickly, and in far greater numbers than anything we could imagine in this world. But you see, that is the purpose of the noble lie in our world, isn't it? It's to prevent this rebellion. It's to prevent Atlas from shrugging. That is why we lie to men. That is, we, the world, women, other men. Well, women lie to men for obvious reasons. They don't want men to catch on, and they want to make use of men's utility. Other men lie to their fellow men for different reasons, sometimes to gain one-upsmanship, sometimes to outcompete them, but I don't think that's usually a reason. Those aren't usually the reasons. The most prominent reason to my mind is that every man wants to believe the lie. Of course you matter. Of course your feelings matter. But the minute you turn malfunctional, forget about it. So you just stand there confused for a really long time. Your entire life. Indoctrinated, acculturated. Finally, the robot is coming offline, right? But Mgtow is a different kind of coming offline. It's much more about self-awareness. It's acknowledging that you're no longer the robot that you used to be. That service is meaningless to everyone, essentially, except yourself. You know, I know a lot of people like to revere the military, but I don't think very much of it. You guys should listen to the talk that Barbarossa had with Straight Shooter, and it's described very well. The individuality you had as a man is beaten out of you. You are to become a unit, a robotic unit, and you exist to serve. You ever listen to war memorials or dedications to veterans? It's always for the service that XYZ performed, for the deeds, completely interchangeable with some other vet who might have performed the same service. That's because there is no human veteran. There's just a thing that did something, and you could exchange it for another thing. Of course, vets are so valuable when they're injured, they're given Purple Hearts, at least in the United States. And of course, a Purple Heart must be worth its weight in gold, especially if you had your legs blown off in an IED accident. Yep, it's definitely worth it. Lose your legs, get a chunk of metal pinned to your chest. Colored metal, too. Definitely worth it. You see, this is all part of this gigantic, noble lie that just will never die. It's ironic that the bravest thing a man can do is to risk his life for people he doesn't even know. And then he gets his 5 minutes of fame. I remember this years ago. Some guy in the New York City subway jumped on the tracks and saved a baby or a child, I don't know, a woman. And so he appeared on David Letterman for 5 minutes. 5 minutes of fame. Who knows what he's doing now? Maybe he's forgotten. Maybe he's homeless. Who knows? That's all it is. Now, I actually think the other reality would be better than the current reality, because men would know, they would become aware, they would eventually, and much more quickly, seize upon the opportunities they had. I mean, after all, let's be honest with ourselves. Let's be brutally honest with ourselves. How many men are out there still trudging along the production line, if you will, doing things they don't really want to do? Why? Why are they doing it? Well, why are they accountants, engineers, lawyers? Are they really passionate about accounting, engineering, and law? Well, no doubt a few of them were, but I reckon a large majority of them weren't at all. In fact, I reckon a large majority of them did it because they knew they could make money, and it would be a stable income, and they could attract a mate, and they would look impressive in the eyes of society, and. But never mind those 60-hour work weeks and the fact that he has to commute an hour and a half every day, or maybe 2 hours, or maybe 3 hours, and all this other shit, just so he can look good in the eyes of the many and the eyes of the prospective females that he seeks to mate with. But in this other world, he might have had real passions, but he knew he was a slave, and he knew he was a robot. Maybe he would have become aware of these things much more quickly. How many men sacrifice their passions and their dreams, for lack of a better word, to do something that everyone else does, just so they can fit in, and just so they can please others? Maybe the guy liked playing piano, or drawing, or painting. Maybe he liked spending all his free time reading history novels and reading about history. But what did he do? He went to university, studied engineering, studied accounting. He went into those fields because it was told him, yeah, these pay well. You'll make lots of money. And he's making lots of money, doesn't have any time to spend it. He's stressed out, he's losing his hair, he just got an ulcer the other week. But hey, women are going to pay attention to him, aren't they? Isn't that great? And his mother is so proud of him. So proud of him because she hated the fact that he played piano, and she hated the fact that he liked art, and she hated the fact that he liked to laze around for hours reading about history. No, he took the righteous path. You know, the reality is, at the end of the day, in spite of all I have said, or indeed because of it, we have all grown aware of our robotification. And there is a silent rebellion out there. Make no mistake. It's small for now, but I think it's going to grow. Because we all hate that lie. It was the worst lie ever told to us. It was the most hurtful, the most painful, the one that made us the most angry. We were told that we were human beings. We were told that we matter, not just with the stuff that we did. We were told that women love us for who we are, when not even your mother ever did that. So yes, we were robotified. But if anything, Mgtow is the process of humanizing ourselves in every respect. Learning that the only person that we serve is the person that we are. We do not serve the rest of the world. And that in shrugging our shoulders, that we no longer hold up that edifice that bears the world, it might all come crashing down. And frankly speaking, I don't care. I don't think you should either. Why should we care about a world that, to quote Barbarossa, that to the bitter end will hate you for being at the top and hate you even more for being at the bottom? Why? Why should you serve when all you can ever achieve through service is more service and more service until you die? The only one that you should be serving is yourself. And I think this is what it is. This is what Mgtow is. It's the humanification as opposed to robotification of the male human. It's not one that others recognize. It's an intensely individual thing, this humanification. But unlike this other alternative scenario I offered, we do have to grow up with this lie. And some people never get past it. Ever. As the late man-woman myth once said, if the penalty for divorce were decapitation, a lot of men would still get married. But as for the rest of us, I think we're quite done with service. Quite done with being robots. And quite done with just about everything in the world apart from ourselves. It is, at the end of the day, Mgtow that is, silent rebellion. It is the rebellion that almost necessarily must come after the robotification of the human male. Thanks for watching.